and in his outreach into the communities of the Middle East. He's not feared to tread into the Middle East, but equally he's not trod without great care. And he's also tried to build bridges across religious divides. And although it's not our topic tonight, the terrible shootings in Toulouse remind us that building bridges of understanding and respect is one of the duties of public leadership. And I think that Rowan Williams has discharged those duties with enormous compassion and commitment. And I feel it's important to say that. You, the supporters of One Voice, make something that is necessary, that is unique, and that is right possible. You make the dialogue and discussion of Israelis and Palestinians, especially young Israelis and Palestinians, possible. And just because something is necessary and right and unique doesn't mean it will happen. So it's important to recognise that some of the things you'll hear about tonight in the film, in the speeches, wouldn't happen without your commitment. And I first met, as I think Annie, you suggested, I first met the Young Voice leaders with David Levin in 2008. And I immediately saw from that meeting that they were both ordinary and extraordinary. You've got two remarkable young leaders here tonight, and they're going to speak to you from Israel and from Palestine. They were ordinary young people because they were idealistic, brave, raw in the way that they expressed themselves, insightful. And I think those are qualities that if you take the time to talk to young people around the world, you actually find in great abundance. But they were also extraordinary because they were defying conventional opinion in their own communities. By 2008, any notion that there was an inevitability about a two-state solution had disappeared, but more than that, it was no longer fashionable to be talking about a two-state solution in the Middle East. And so these young people were, I think, extraordinary in the way they defied conventional opinion. And what I most liked about them was that they were trying to mobilize something that money can't buy, and that is people power. They were trying to mobilize opinion and action for a great and vital cause for both of their communities. And in that sense, they were trying to live out that hackneyed phrase of be the change that is within you. They were actually doing it themselves. And I have to say, they taught me something very, very important. I spent 20 years trying to help the Labour Party become a good government for the people. But what One Voice, amongst others, taught me was that you can't have a good government for the people unless you have a commitment to government by the people. And the emphasis in One Voice of governance by the people, mobilization of the people, I think has very wide resonance. The achievements are not to be sneezed at all. Merely the dialogue itself sends a tremendous message, I think, to communities right around the world. The individual actions, whether it be reopening the Gaza office, mobilizing to block the recent outposts bill, reaching out in the United States to universities, doing some tremendous work in Britain, actually, in universities where both Palestinians and Jewish communities have felt under some kind of siege. One Voice has been able to show in Britain that actually dialogue is the answer to a sense of siege. So I want to say to you tonight that you're supporting an organisation that is doing some important good. But if I only said that, I think you would go away dissatisfied because that is not the whole truth. And I think that in 2012 it's important to recognise that's not the whole truth. Because the wider truth is that One Voice is doing some good in circumstances that are basically very bad. Circumstances in which the search, the drive, the mobilisation for a two-state solution, in shorthand, in which those circumstances are far from propitious. In fact, the circumstances in many ways have rarely been worse in the last 30 or 40 years, and I think it would be dishonest and otherwise. I've said publicly that the failure to establish a Palestinian state at the middle of Israel is the greatest diplomatic failure in 40 years. And it's the greatest diplomatic failure because actually it's one of those international problems to which there is actually a viable solution. There's a young man here from the University of Manchester. He was in the event I did in Manchester last week. And I think it was there I was asked about Somalia. There you go. And the truth is I don't know what the answer is in Somalia. But in respect of that small piece of land at the heart of the Middle East, I do think my opinion and that of the majority of Israelis and Palestinians, which is that you need two states able to live side by side with each other, is the right answer. And it's the greatest failure of diplomacy, because diplomacy has failed to bring it about. And there is suffering and injustice and insecurity on both sides as a result of it, great suffering and great injustice and great insecurity. And this is a very, very challenging period, because in blunt terms, to speak in basic politics to you, the Israel-Palestine question is probably now fourth or fifth on the Middle East political agenda, never mind on the global political agenda. And I say that to you not to depress you, but to tell you both the truth, and also to say to you that the fundraising that's going to be done late at night is even more important because of that political context. If in fact this was a fashionable cause that was the inevitable product of history, then OneVoice would be worthwhile but much less necessary. It's because there's a real question about whether the two-state solution will ever be achieved that is even more necessary than ever. The truth is that the agenda in Israel, in the United States, and I have to say in large parts of the Gulf, is not about Israel-Palestine, it's about Iran. The truth is that the Arab Spring has turned regional attention away from the Israel-Palestine question. The Israel Spring, the Tel Aviv Spring last March, was notable for many things, one of which was the word Palestine was not mentioned at all in the demonstrations that took place in the heart of Tel Aviv. And the Palestinian Spring has not yet sprung. And it's for those reasons that this cause I think is vital to the state of Israel and vital to the people of Palestine, is not, it has fallen to being fourth or fifth on the regional agenda. And it's almost, the danger is almost that the leaders give up on leading in the search for this answer. And it's that danger that makes the work of OneVoice especially important. And I want to say it so for a very particular reason that goes to the heart of something that's important to me in politics. Some people will tell you that hope leads to action. And I'm afraid to tell you, I think that's profoundly wrong. Action leads to hope. And that's what makes OneVoice important. Action leads to hope because it achieves successes, however small, that inspire confidence in greater successes. Action leads to hope because it requires the building of coalitions that can make change. Action leads to hope because it requires you to persuade people who are not immediately in your frame of mind. Action leads to hope because it allows you to say, here are tangible gains as a result of what has been done. And if OneVoice is about anything, it's actually about action first and hope as a product, rather than a vain call to hope that one day might produce action. And the world, frankly, is full of people who can make speeches about why things should be better, and it's not full enough of people who are going around making them better. And that is essentially what I take the message of OneVoice to be. My own view about the ultimate negotiations that need to take place, the substantive negotiations, is very much in line with the OneVoice vision in terms of the substance of the settlement. But I'd also add, just as an international relations gloss, that my own instinct is that this Israel-Palestine question will only ever be settled in the context of a wider Arab settlement with the state of Israel. In other words, we have to regionalise the political solution. That was the vision, after all, of the Arab Peace Initiative in 2002. The 10th anniversary next month is, I think, a very significant moment of reflection, because it was the time when every Arab state of the Arab League said it would recognise Israel in return for the creation of a Palestinian state. So we have to regionalise the political solution. But in my view, we also need to internationalise the diplomatic effort. If we rely only on the United States as the motor of progress in the region, then I'm afraid that we're going to be waiting a very long time. The United States is a very important actor in promoting international diplomacy to resolve this question, but it can't be the only actor. It needs to be part of a wider coalition. But that is, in a way, not the main point of tonight. The main point of tonight is to say that that flame of hope of a one-state solution is only kept alive by action. And that is what I think One Voice can do. And if you think about it, there's a double meaning in the title of One Voice. Because on its own, what is one voice? Nothing. It's lost into the air. But the double meaning of the organisation One Voice is of many people speaking with one voice. And when many people speak with one voice, they are not isolated and dissipated and diluted and lost into the atmosphere. They're actually magnified into a call that is heard far and wide. And I think that what the young people have done in joining this is rejecting the pessimism that says, my voice is meaningless, I'm alone, I can't do anything. There are plenty of people propagating that view about politics, whether in Israel or in Palestine. And instead recognizing that as part of a bigger coalition, one voice can mean that louder, stronger, more forceful sense that you're part of something bigger than yourself. Let me just finish on the following note. I think that it's true, and some of you will know this better than I, that in many people's hearts and heads, in Israel and in Palestine, talk of a quote-unquote peace process rings hollow. Calls for a new, renewed, invigorated quote-unquote peace process rings hollow. What isn't hollow is the notion that human beings need to find a better way of living together than one that is separated by mistrust, never mind worse. And what One Voice tries to do is, in a way, the most difficult thing, but also the most noble thing in politics, which is to get people who think they have divergent interests to recognise that they actually have convergent interests. It's my profound passion that the whole world is more unjust and less safe as a result of our failure in the Middle East, but it's also my conviction that the peoples of the Middle East have some remarkable strengths. And if only the strengths that we know exist both amongst Israelis and Palestinians could be mobilized in common cause, then actually the future of the Middle East need not be the bloodletting and mistrust that has typified so much of the past. So if that is the spirit that you've come here tonight, if that's the commitment that you want to make, it's certainly my commitment, and I really hope you'll be able to not just raise a glass, but get out your checkbook to support an organisation in a part of the world that has too few organisations that are flames of hope and really continue to make a difference. Thank you very much indeed.